Williams, the NFL writer for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and we're here at Frankie's Sports Bar and Grill to discuss the NFL Draft. I was in New York, and we're going to give you the winners and the losers, and maybe have a wing or two. I'm going to give the Cowboys a grade of B. It was a pretty solid draft. They stuck to what they wanted to do. I think the one disappointment was they gave up the third-round draft pick. Remember last year they got two starters out of that third round in Charean Williams and in the safety J.J. Wilcox, who they expect to start this season. So, you know, I didn't like that part for them trading up, but they really liked DeMarcus Lawrence. They had to have a pass rusher. So this whole draft really is dependent on how DeMarcus Lawrence pans out for him. He's got to be an elite pass rusher for this to be a really good draft for the Cowboys. The first-round pick, Zach Martin, they wanted Ryan Shazier. If he had been there, they would have drafted Ryan Shazier, and I think we will all come out of this saying, hey, they had a really great draft, because I don't think they would have traded up for DeMarcus Lawrence. They would have sat there and gotten maybe another defensive player and then maybe gotten the guard in the third round, and they would have come out of this with two defensive starters, surefire defensive starters. So it's unfortunate that the Steelers took Ryan Shazier, a pick before the Cowboys did, because I think he would have been really, really good. But I understand why they took Zach Martin. They tried to trade down. That didn't pan out, and they ended up sitting there and taking the best player on the board at a position of sort of need. They passed on Johnny Manziel, obviously, who was rated higher, and drafted Zach Martin, who's going to be a very good offensive lineman for this team. Start out at right guard and probably eventually will end up at right tackle. As Manziel's fallen down the draft board, I really did think the Cowboys were going to draft him at 16. I just didn't think Jerry Jones would be able to resist the marketing opportunities, the opportunity to have a starter come in after Romo's done with his career. I know Johnny Manziel would have to sit for a couple years at least before he goes in and plays, but it just seemed like a natural fit for Johnny Manziel and Jerry Jones to be paired together. Johnny Manziel, I talked to him on Saturday. I talked to him in New York as well. He really thought he was going to the Cowboys. He thought Jerry Jones was going to draft him. He turned to his agent and said, I think this is real. I think I'm going to Dallas. But it didn't happen, and so now he ends up in Cleveland, obviously, at number 22. You know, there's some thought that with Johnny sitting there for 21 picks before he finally got picked at 22 by the Browns, that might have been the best thing to ever happen to him. It humbled him. It's going to make him work harder. He already had a huge chip on his shoulder. That chip just got a whole lot bigger. I think, as he told me in February, that Frito became a Dorito that was sitting on his shoulder there. So it's going to do him a world of good, I think, being the number 22 pick as opposed to the number 3 or the number 4 pick as he thought he was going to be. He is going to fit in Cleveland. There's no question about that. They've had 20 starters since they came back in as an expansion team in 1999. He knows those numbers. He thinks number 21, Johnny Manziel, is going to be the right fit for the Cleveland Browns and the franchise quarterback that they've looked for so long, probably since Bernie Kosar was there. The one thing I worry about is his arm strength. He has plenty of arm strength to play in the NFL, but Cleveland is a different place. With the winds, with the cold, you really, really, really got to have a strong arm. And so I hope he succeeds in the NFL. I hope he brings the kind of excitement that he brought to college football the last 2 years. Most of the Cowboys picks came in the 7th round. You don't expect 7th round picks to come in and play immediately and contribute. In fact, most of them aren't even going to make the roster. The Cowboys hope to find one gem in those 7 rounders that they drafted. Most of those were compensatory picks. They couldn't be traded. They sat there and did that. I really like Ahmad Dixon, the safety from Baylor, a hard hitter. Maybe doesn't play a lot of safety his first year, but I think he's going to be a very, very good special teams player for the Cowboys. And that's what you hope, how those guys that you drafted late, that some of them can come in and be good special teams players for you in that first year. And Ahmad Dixon is one of those guys who I think will stand out. The last 3 years, I've picked the Cowboys to go 8-8 before the year started. I think I'm probably going to change that this year. I don't see 8-8. I don't think they can get to 8-8. I have them right now at 7-9. Obviously, we'll see as we go through the OTAs and the off-season practices, and then when they get in training camp, what this team looks like, what the injury situation is. They were really hurt last year by injuries. I understand that. And if they can stay healthy, I think they do have a chance to go 9-7, but they have to stay healthy, and that's something they haven't done, something Sean Lee hasn't done, Morris Claiborne hasn't done. You just go down the list. And how is Tony Romo's going to be after 2 back surgeries in 8 months? So a lot of questions with this team right now. I think when you start to look at players who can be impact players right away from this draft, obviously the Texans sat at #1. Were not tempted too much by the quarterbacks, although they really needed a quarterback, and drafted the best player in this draft, Jadeveon Clowney. And he could be the defensive rookie of the year because he's going to be lined up with J.J. Watt, and that's going to be a great pairing. They're going to double J.J. Watt. He's going to see some single blocking, and I think he's going to be really, really good in Houston. That defense is going to be really, really good. So I think Clowney right now is my favorite to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. On the offensive side, you got to like what the New Orleans Saints did in getting the receiver Brandon Cooks. I think Cooks is going to line up in that offense and be an instant hit. I think receivers traditionally have a kind of a tough time breaking into the NFL as rookies, but I think Cooks has a huge impact with Drew Brees as his quarterback. So look for Cooks to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. You know, most people can't name a single 7th-round pick other than Michael Sam, so he's already had an impact on the NFL. You look at jersey sales and the excitement he's generated. He's not the first gay player to play in the NFL. There's no question about that. The statistics say that. There have been known gay players within the NFL ranks who have played in the NFL, but they just didn't come out and do it publicly as Michael Sam is. I think this opens the door maybe for more players, depending on how this thing goes, to come out and let it be known that they're gay and they're football players. They're football players who happen to be gay, not necessarily a gay football player. They are football players first. And so, you know, kudos to Michael Sam, A, for getting drafted, you know, B, for doing what he's done, and C, for the chance to make this football team. It's going to be tough now. You know, he was drafted in the 7th round for a reason. He kind of lacks the talent. He's kind of a tweener pick there, and didn't perform well at the Combine, didn't perform that well at his pro day. But I think everybody in the NFL wants to see him succeed, at least in the hierarchy of the NFL, wants to see him succeed and make it with the St. Louis Rams. For the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, I'm Charean Williams.